On a quiet suburban street, where lace curtains and well-kept gardens usually hide only everyday secrets, stands an anomaly. A structure that screams silence. A house sealed. Yellow police tape, faded by time and rain, wraps around the property like a shroud, swaying lazily in a non-existent breeze. The windows, blinded by crude planks, looked like the empty eyes of a dead creature. The front door, once inviting, is now locked with rusty chains, corroded metal that seems to bleed onto the concrete. They say a heinous crime occurred there, a horror so profound that the very structure of the house was condemned, marked to never again be inhabited. But the truth, whispered on moonless nights and in lonely nightmares, is different. Sometimes the lights flicker inside, brief, ghostly flashes that vanish before you can even be sure of what you saw. Shadows move in the few cracks, distorted silhouettes that seem to dance with the dust. And sometimes a faint wail, almost a painful gasp, echoes from its silent interior, dragging itself through the heavy air. Who could be there? And why, even after the official condemnation, is the silence of that house never truly empty? Meet Clara. She's not a ghost hunter, nor a conspiracy theorist. Clara is an investigative journalist, skeptical by nature, but with a disturbing history of obsession with unsolved cases, with enigmas the world has decided to ignore. She arrived in this small town, where time seems to have stood still, drawn by the rumors of the sealed house, by the aura of terror that surrounded it like a mist. The property, a faded Victorian building, with paint peeling in strips like aged skin, exuded a persistent smell of mold, of rotting wood, and something more, something metallic and ancient, like dried blood, a smell that clung to the nostrils and to the soul. She spent days in town, interviewing neighbors, their voices low, their eyes wide with fear. Even in broad daylight, they spoke of the Hargrave family, the last to live there, who simply vanished without a trace. The police never found bodies, only a scene of grotesque disarray, overturned furniture, broken dishes, and signs of an invisible, brutal struggle that left no visible marks. A terrifying void where a family once was. Clara felt a chill down her spine, not from fear, but from the hungry curiosity that burned in her chest, an almost pathological need to scratch the surface and expose what was hidden beneath the planks and the legends. She knew that house held more than secrets. It held echoes. Clara delved into the police archives. Dusty documents, faded by time, that told a painfully incomplete story. Old typewritten reports revealed that the house was not just the scene of the Hargraves' disappearance. It had been the stage for a series of unexplained deaths over the decades, always of different families, always with mysterious disappearances and trails of panic. No natural deaths, just vanishings, hasty escapes, or scenes of horror that the police could never explain. It was as if the house had an insatiable hunger. In damp, moldy cardboard boxes, Clara found old photographs. The same house, but with a different aura in each era. In sepia photos from the 1920s, it looked imposing,
but strangely somber. In colored photos from the 1970s, it looked desolate, with an air of abandonment. It was as if it absorbed the misfortune of its inhabitants, layer by layer, becoming denser, heavier. A yellowed and torn newspaper clipping mentioned a curse of the foundations, an obscure local legend. It spoke of a dark pact made during the house's original construction, involving gruesome sacrifices and the summoning of something ancient, something that should never have been disturbed. The more Clara investigated, the more the house seemed to call to her, not with audible voices, but with an undeniable sensation, a chilling pulse that seemed to come from the very walls, a dissonant melody that only she could hear, a song of pain and waiting. Her days were filled with research, her nights with vivid nightmares, where the shadows of the house danced around her, calling her name. And so far, what do you think is really happening? Leave your theory in the comments.
Driven by an uncontrollable need, almost a supernatural compulsion, Clara made up her mind. She would enter the house. The chosen night was humid and suffocating, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth and something denser, almost sweet, like rotting flowers or meat. It was the smell of the house. She approached with a backpack, the heavy pliers in her hand. The grinding of the metal cutting through the rusty chains was a loud, profane sound that seemed to echo throughout the sleeping neighborhood. But no one appeared. As she opened the door, a miasma of stagnant, cold air hit her, a foul breath that made her step back, making her cough. It was air that hadn't moved in years, laden with the history of everything that had happened there. The interior was a museum of despair. Furniture covered by dusty sheets, white ghosts in the darkness, seemed like macabre sculptures. Her flashlight beam swept the room, revealing layers of dirt and abandonment. But there was something more disturbing. Strange footprints in the thick dust on the floor. Marks that weren't from police boots, but from something that dragged its feet. Something heavy and shapeless. And the whisper. A continuous, low, unintelligible whisper that seemed to come from all directions, as if the walls were breathing. Clara felt the temperature drop drastically in certain parts of the rooms, zones of glacial cold that made her shiver even in her thick coat. Her skin crawled with the unmistakable feeling of being watched, the hairs on her neck standing on end. She found incomprehensible scribbles on the hallway walls, ancient and disturbing symbols, drawn with something dark and dry. They weren't ordinary graffiti, but something more archaic, sinister. The feeling that she wasn't alone became overwhelming, suffocating. She heard a shuffling of footsteps coming from upstairs, a slow, heavy sound, as if something was being dragged across the wooden floor. Clara froze, the flashlight trembling in her hand. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with us, but prepare yourself, because what comes next might change your view of reality forever. Clara, compelled by a force that wasn't her own, descended into the basement. The air down there was even heavier, denser, the smell of mold mixed with something putrid, something sweet and sickly, like decaying flesh. It was a stench that entered the lungs and burned. She turned on her flashlight, and the flickering light revealed something shocking. There were no signs of human life there, but the basement was filled with recent drag marks, deep gouges in the packed earth, as if something heavy and shapeless had been dragged from there into the darkest corner. And in the center, a crude altar made of rough, uneven stones on which lay melted black candles, their wax dripping like dried blood. A dark, viscous liquid stained the ground around it, a trail that seemed to move in the gloom. Suddenly, without warning, the flashlight failed. The flickering light flickered once, twice, and then died, plunging Clara into total and absolute darkness, a blackness so dense it seemed to suck out all sound. The dragging sounds she had heard from upstairs were now very close, coming from the darkness around her. A guttural whisper echoed from somewhere to her right, words that couldn't be understood, but whose intent was clear. Malevolence, hunger. A chilling, paralyzing cold enveloped Clara like a shroud, her bones freezing. She couldn't breathe. Pure terror seized her. She felt a cold, bony hand touch her shoulder, an unmistakable pressure that couldn't be seen, but was undeniably real. Skeletal fingers closed on her skin, and she knew she wasn't alone. She never had been. With a strangled scream, Clara managed to turn the flashlight back on, her fingers trembling uncontrollably. But what she saw froze her in paralyzing horror. The basement walls, previously static, seemed to pulsate like veins of a living organism. The shadows were no longer just shadows. They danced impossibly, distorting, forming gaunt and grotesque figures, deformed faces of agony. She realized with terrifying clarity that the house was not empty because something inhabited it, something that fed on the fear and despair of those who died there. It was an ancient entity, an ancestral evil, trapped within the structure of the house, manifesting through the echoes of the dead, the trails of suffering left by every family that perished there. And in that instant, Clara, in a flash of despair and comprehension, realized that she had become the next prey. The air grew heavy, almost solid, and the entity's presence became overwhelming, an invisible force that pushed her to the ground. She tried to escape, dragging herself, crawling, her fingers scraping the dirt floor. But the house, the very structure of the house, wouldn't let her. The walls seemed to close in. The whispers became screams of dozens of agonizing voices, and the shadows condensed, forming a shapeless, pulsating mass. The last thing she saw was the floor opening beneath her, an abyss of living darkness. Days later, the police tape remained intact on the facade of the Hargrave house, the rusty chains on the door as visible as before. But for those who dare to get close enough, for those who listen carefully, a new faint wail joins the whispers that echo from the sealed house, and sometimes the lights still flicker. This house is sealed, but who truly lives there? And will the evil that dwells within its walls one day find a new home? Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will challenge your limits, and don't miss our next video.